welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending our first series in 2025 of Guardians of Identity. My name is Sperry Billier and I have Shri Pale as well from ObserveID. So happy New Year. We wanted to just say thank you again. The idea behind these webinars is to have open-minded, like-minded folks that really want to work and learn together. So we're very interested in hearing and learning about real-life examples that you are working with so we can continue advancing AI in the AIM space. I am so happy to introduce Shri, a colleague and good friend. He's the co-founder and chief product officer of ObserveID, and which ObserveID is an AI-enabled converged platform. He's an IT veteran for over 20 years, helping organizations deal with IAM challenges like for the last 20 years. So welcome, Shri.
Thank you, Sperry.
Yes, so we are going to go next to the agenda, Shri, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to look at today, this is just sort of an overall generate of the Guardians of Identity, being the how is AI revolutionizing IAM. It is an hour presentation. So obviously we're going to be touching on some key points. And then over the next couple months, we'll be doing some deep dives into these topics. So we'll be looking at security and automating compliance, looking at how analytics has been completely changed and helpful for organizations, the future of IAM, and of course, we'll have some time for questions. If you have any questions, please, you can use the chat on the side, and then we will get to them as for sure. I promise you, if we don't have the answer, we will get it for you and get it back. We will be sending out webinar resources and support guides with respect to this topic that we will send after the webinar. And this, again, is the first of many webinars this year. So again, thank you for attending our first one this year, and I'll pass it over to Shri.
Thank you, Sperry. Thank you all for joining the webinar today. And I wish you all a very happy and safe New Year's. And let's get in and see what we got for today's webinar. First and foremost, I would like to pay tribute to our great professor who achieved his PhD in the late 90s and who taught us artificial intelligence in our grad school. And one of the things, the very first day when we attended the class, he talked about probability. And we will go in detail why probability and AI and how it is important, how it is kind of getting into IAM ecosystem, and how we are kind of revolutionizing the whole IAM concept with the help of AI. Now, along with that, I would like to pay tribute to a couple of my old colleagues, Phil Popek, one of the best guys I learned a lot in my life, and Amit Yoran, who recently passed. Many of you are aware. There are some great contributions from these individuals who enlightened us what is this IAM space is all about. And if we are calling this IAM today, there are many folks that are kind of contributing their knowledge and skills to kind of enhance the ecosystem. So when I talked about probability, talk about a day in the life. You may be wondering, why do we have this mailbox? What is this scenario here, right? I talked about the AI. If you talk about IAM, there is IA. If you reverse them, there is AI within IAM. And everything within AI is data-driven. Data is the most important and key element in case of AI. So how is it relevant and what are we looking at here? So take a look at how a real-life example of a mailman scenario. If I talk about a mailman delivering mail to you, it is obvious when the mailman comes and delivers your mail, you get it. If I give you a question saying, hey, when can you expect your mail? If you are observing your mailman's arrival and departure, like what time they're kind of delivering your mail, if I give you 2 days sample data, if you observe both days, one day the mailman shows up at 2 p.m. and the second day the mailman shows up at 3 p.m. And now when you analyze that, the third day when I ask you, hey, what time the mailman is going to show up, your probability of being correct or accurate is only 50% there. So it's all kind of coming back to the amount of data that you're feeding. Imagine adding additional attributes to that. If I give you 1 week's worth of data, first 2 days the mailman delivered your mail at 2 p.m. The last 3 days the mailman delivered the mail at 3 p.m. So if I submit this data set, the probability of mail being delivered, the odds are more for 3 p.m. than 2 p.m. Now you can relate to how simple analogy this was and why our professor started the class for the artificial intelligence with the probability, and how he simplified the analogy of like how this is going to be kind of helping analyzing the large data sets and volume of data to kind of apply it to real life scenarios. Now let's go one level deeper to this one. If you expect the mail at certain time, that's all right, you're expecting something. Adding the time aspect of it along with any additional parameters is more and more critical. Now you can see your FedEx, UPS, and other kind of systems sends a notification to you that your package or mail will be delivered at certain time on a certain day. So that means it's predictive. You understand, you know when that mail will be delivered. Now, imagine IAM being the digital mailman scenario here, right? If you apply the same scenario here, who is the mailman kind of knowing where to deliver that mail or which house to deliver? So the same thing, if you look in the IAM lens, it determines which users are authorized to access data, right? And then the next thing is what. The what is, in this case, in the mailman scenario, it is the package or letters or like whatever that they're delivering. In case of IAM, if you kind of look at it from the IAM lens, what access or what is the account that they're using, whether can they read, write, delete data, whatever the next level of permissions. And the next thing is when. The mailman can predict the delivery schedule the same way. If you look at it from the IAM lens, IAM can enforce access controls based on certain times. So for example, you have your employees or contractors, and if you want to kind of enforce and add some kind of restrictions, all the contractors can access my data when they're on premises from 8 to 4. Anything that's outside of that anomaly, you're tracking. You can add that to your context. And now the next thing is where. So here is another thing. The mailman has an address to deliver that mail. That is that where component from the mail perspective. When it comes to the IAM, or when you look at it from the IAM lens, you can restrict the access based on location and users that can only access specific type of users based on whether you're at home, whether you're at work, or whether you're traveling abroad somewhere else. So there are a lot of aspects of these in our real life scenarios. They all get to how we are using these systems. If you think of it more practical scenarios, they're all kind of making sense. Now let's go look at simplifying the security to strengthen it. And we all kind of learned our lessons during COVID. In the past decade or so, we have seen the infrastructure going hybrid. A lot of people are using cloud-based technologies, cloud solutions are like moving to different clouds, various clouds. Now, the workforce is also being hybrid. I'm sure like many of you who are on the call, working remotely, participating, doing things on multiple clouds. Now, what does it mean? In the old school system, the IAM systems were managing things within the enterprise ecosystem. Now that surface has kind of significantly increased. It's going beyond your within network perimeter here. So now we are expanding it to a cloud or multi-cloud. How do we kind of simplify this thing? This is where your unified visibility, the 360-degree visibility, and your ability to detect, investigate, and respond to these things. Any incident that happens in the past, it used to be easy to kind of contain within a network. Now that network, given that it's kind of expanding exponentially in the cloud ecosystem, how do we kind of safeguard this? This is where we'll apply some more use cases in the next few minutes. So there are some of the best practices I would like to share here. There are like so many different things that we have here on the screen, as you can see. And some of the key things we'll be touching up on are discussing. Some of the things that are directly related to IAM. So my main question here is, most of you are into the identity or identity security, are interested in this IAM. Now let's talk about how AI is applied to some of these things. I'll pick like a handful of concepts from here so that we can discuss. And the key ones that I kind of see are for this webinar I picked are context-aware authentication and lifecycle management, enhancing the threat detection and response, and centralized access visibility, identity visibility. Now, the very first one, context-aware authentication. Let's go back to that mail analogy again. When I say context-aware authentication, depending on whether you are accessing a specific application from home or from workplace, if you are at work, you may not need a second factor authentication or like a third factor authentication, whatever. But if you're accessing it from a remote location, you may want to implement that. How do you do that? By taking advantage of your behavioral and also context-aware authentication systems or mechanisms, you can apply this. And then automate the identity and lifecycle management, right? What does it mean? Let's go into more details of your automation concepts and how they are going to be helping you reducing number of mistakes or errors that each organization kind of does. So if you look at this one, automating compliance and governance, the user provisioning, I'm sure most of you are very familiar. Your joiner, mover, leaver scenarios, we keep talking for the last 20 years. Why does it matter more? And why does it matter now? And why is it so important to talk about this thing? I'm sure even some of you, even today, noticing some of these distributed systems are like systems that are not able to integrate with your current platforms. You may be doing manual provisioning. And I was talking to one of the CISOs, a great enlightening statement that he made was manual means mistakes or manual leads to mistakes. What does that really mean? If you automate the user provisioning with dynamic role assignment, your birthright role concepts, there are like multiple things that are automatically happening. Your onboarding efficiency increases significantly, and the manual equation you're taking out of the scenario here. As I mentioned, manual means mistakes, manual leads to mistakes can be avoided here. And now let's talk about the same concept on your deprovisioning scenario. So when you are automating this revocation process, you do not need to worry about who has some leftover access. And I'm sure like 9 out of 10 cases you must have seen in case of your legacy systems where if this is not fully automated, periodically you may be doing your orphan account checks and you may be kind of seeing somebody left the organization a few days ago, a few years ago, a few months ago, still having certain access. By automating this deprovisioning process, you're taking that part, the guesswork, or somebody having leftover access out of equation. And in every case here, when you are doing this automation, you have the auditable logs, which will come in the later section. We'll see how these logs are very important, where they're being kind of scrutinized, how they're helping from the analytics perspective. So overall, 3 things that I want to cover today to re-emphasize. First thing is security. The second thing is your governance and compliance. The third piece is your analytics, how it's contributing, and how AI is kind of sitting on top of all this to kind of enhance the user experience and increasing your security as well as your compliance aspect of it. And then going into improvised analytics and like your compliance reports. And let's talk about this mover scenario, facilitating role transitions. That's what you're seeing here. Dynamic role adjustments in an automated fashion kind of reduces the risk significantly, meaning in case of healthcare industry, as you can see, a daytime nurse can become an evening different persona that's probably need different type of access. In that case, when they're dynamically changing their role between day and evening shifts, how you can reduce, adjust their access depending on what your policies are defined. So now let's get into some boring topic. I'm sure everybody is kind of dreading to see how boring this is. And like I'm sure many of you are the managers here who may be going through this access certification. At least I personally heard from like hundreds, if not thousands of people, how boring, cumbersome, and scary this compliance access review certification process is. Why is this boring? When you send people's access for review to the manager, you are sending a lot of data to the managers. And why is it kind of making things complicated, complex? In the past, we used to give who has access to what data to managers. Now, if you go back to that mail analogy scenario here, the time context can add an additional attribute here, solve some of the key challenges. A simple example. If you go into certification details, if you're analyzing your access detection and then process that data and collect all that, it's not just like who has access to what, you are also collecting when was that access last used. If you collect that information when you're sending it for your certification, your organization wise, you can take out the scut work out of these managers by enabling them acting on these certifications more accurately and taking out the rubber stamping out of equation. One of the key things I want to point out here, a very simple example. If you have that who has access data along with your certification information, sending it to manager, if you create a prompt and your policy, the organization policy that says any access that was not used in the last 90 days, go ahead and revoke that access. What does it mean? If the manager has this AI assistant, has their co-champion kind of doing this kind of scut for them, they can just click on, hey, AI agent, go ahead and assist me certifying this access. It applies all your policies that you kind of defined within your certification mechanism. So as you can see, anything that's outside of that perimeter, like 90 days or beyond, if somebody did not use their account, the AI agent's recommendation would be revoke that access. And if that access is required, they can always go back and request with a just-in-time request or just-in-time access provisioning. As you can see here, it's a simple step process, and slowly it's contributing from security to your compliance to your next step is analytics. As you can see, a lot of organizations have several different regulatory requirements, the GDPR, HIPAA, SOX, NERC. All these processes are contributing to organizations' overall security posture. How do we kind of improvise that? And how do we make use of AI? That is the whole concept that we want to kind of simplify, walk you through, and reduce the burden on the managers and make it more meaningful, make certifications great again. So last one, as I said, first we'll talk about security. The second thing we'll talk about the compliance aspect of it. And last but not least, the analytics. How is analytics contributing to your security as well as your compliance aspect of it? If we look at that one, Let's take a simple example of risk scoring. Depending on the policies that you apply, if I give you a simple policy saying any user that has elevated access on the regular account, not on a privileged account, categorize that as a high risk. Or if somebody having access to a specific application, specific entitlement, tag that with specific risk score. And the same risk scoring can be used in multiple ways when it comes to certifications and your compliance aspect of it. All of a sudden, somebody's risk score going beyond certain threshold can be treated as a significant risk going up. Or you can do a constant evaluation of people's risk. A specific department, a user being in that particular location or particular role can have the risk score varying between 50 to 100, and anything above 100 to 200, that is kind of your red zone or like critical scoring. In that case, what you will be doing, set up a dynamic certification mechanism where anytime the user risk score meets or goes to that level, send a dynamic certification, point in time certification. So what's happening here, if you notice, we are taking the reactive certification, reactive compliance, like the old days, where we used to do your quarterly, half-yearly, annual certification. So what had happened with that process? The certification was reviewed, the access was reviewed for the period of time the user already had access. So if they were to compromise something, or if they had to do some malicious activity, they could have done already within that 3 months, 6 months of annual period. But if you're moving to the proactive approach with the dynamic risk scoring application with your AI-based analytics, the AI engine constantly looking at anybody's risk score abnormally jumping up, or the thresholds that you define and kind of define a policy and state any specific risk score for a department should be treated in a different way. So with that approach, we are applying AI-powered analytics into your compliance. Now it's backwards, like we are kind of taking this data, pushing it into your certification compliance, and the risk score is contributing significantly in multiple ways. If you look at this, the real-time compliance monitoring on your right side of the block, what does it mean? This is where the constant churn of all your access parameters, whatever the attributes that you're contributing to the risk profiling, add valuable data set. And like user behavior forecasting. Now here is where we can have like multiple examples. All your contractors accessing the system, 8-4 scenario that I mentioned earlier. What happens when the certification process goes to a manager? If you apply this AI-powered analytics, if that user logged in on a specific day after 6 o'clock or like late in the evening, there are two ways how a proactive system can stop that. Meaning, you can apply a policy stating, first of all, after that time period, you can block that person's access, or you can flag that and send for a dynamic access review rather than waiting for your 3 months, 6 months, or annual reviews like in the traditional way. And now, if you look at overall anomaly detection, over the period of time, if you sit on this data set, you are kind of sitting on a gold mine. That is why I kind of mentioned early on, the traditional IAM systems were just tracking who has access to what, and we were good with that. Now, we are trying to kind of bring in all aspects of an identity, in the sense, when was that access used, where was that access used, from what level of operational activities that they performed. If you look at it, these are all becoming more and more critical. Going back to the mail analogy again, in the past, the mail delivery itself was okay. Now, your UPS and like FedEx, they kind of give you the proof of the mail delivery with an image that package is delivered, so and so place, right? So the same thing applies here when you're looking at it, that operational activity or the session recording really makes a big difference, where you can take advantage of several aspects of your data sets, contributing to more secured environment, creating a compliant data set for your organization, leading to better outcomes. So let's talk about what is the future, what is next for IAM, and how is AI going to be helping the aspect of reducing the friction. I'm sure having more complex use cases, adding more burden to your IT or even managers and overall team structure can be complex. So a simple example for that, if you define a policy that says every privileged access has to go through some approvals, you have a DBA or a system administrator, somebody going and applying a patch or like doing some kind of emergency maintenance, if they were to wait for some approvals to complete, there is some friction or rub when these teams kind of pushing back and saying, yes, this is all good from the security perspective. How do we avoid that? Now, here is where going back to that where and when and what aspects come into picture, right? If that particular individual, if he or she is kind of doing that particular action from your authorized location, that can be your data center or it can be your office location or within your network, you can reduce that and adjust the kind of verification methods that you're going to use. I think I mentioned that earlier. You can do your two-factor or even third-factor verification depending on where you're accessing that data set from. So for example, in healthcare industry, this is very applicable and meaningful. What is happening is a physician that is working within the hospital, when they're accessing their systems, they get prompted for their user ID login or password, or like even some of the latest ones have the facial recognition and like few other things. If they are working within the office location or approved hospital location, that can be simplified. The minute the physician gets home and tries to access that system, they'll be prompted for additional verification systems like your one-time use password or like the passcodes or biometric authentication with like additional MFA verification, things like that. So enhancing security by detecting anomalies, like now in this case, you just saw some individual doing the same access, trying to access the same thing from one location to other location, significantly changes. So if you look at this whole overall anomaly, the potential threat that they bring in. So for example, there is a bad actor trying to impersonate or like access the same thing from some international location, right? Systems can leverage that where concept. What is the specific geographic location they're coming from? What is the specific IP address they're coming from? Hey, I'm not expecting this user to be logging in at this time from this particular location. You can whitelist or you can like block some of those regions where you kind of see they are not authorized or they are not safe to open it for access for your specific application. Let's look at the future of how the learning, the machine learning. When I mentioned about the data is the key component here, and I don't know how many of you seen the CES 2025 Jensen Huang's opening day statement. It talks about AI is going to be taking over, and what is AI at the end of the day? He portrayed it like he kind of explained it the right way. Everything revolves around data sets, right? We have to leverage the data and train the models the right way. So going back to our mail analogy, it's like I gave you an example of using 2 days worth of data, using 1 week's worth of data. Now apply the same thing with IAM concept here, right? How the financial industry and healthcare and like various others applying the same concept, the fraud detection systems. For example, I'm sure like you must have seen in your lifetime, sometime or other, your credit card or like bank account getting compromised or like having some kind of issue. So how are these financial industry institutions trying to kind of detect these? One simple example, I was on a business trip and I had to kind of like return my rental car, and like I just filled gas and like I went to the airport to return my rental car. Within that time period, within like 5 to 10 minutes from the time I filled my gas, getting to the rental car return place, I got my phone call from the bank to credit card company stating that there was a fraud detected and there's a fraudulent transaction. Your card is declined when I was returning the rental car. How did they detect that? They are all applying all these mechanisms. They know that if I am traveling, if I'm returning my rental car, where I'm heading, and like the credit card was charged in 2 to 3 different locations with the skimmer technology, whatever that they used to steal my information. So as you can see, the systems are becoming more and more sophisticated. The real-time anomaly detection without aggregating sensitive data. So in the sense, like in this particular case, what's happening, they're just taking my location details and my behavioral things and like where I'm traveling, what I'm doing. All of a sudden, like I'm going and like purchasing various in various locations, various different goods. How are these kind of going to be contributing? If you look at the shared model that's on the picture, right? Your access can be the first block here, and your location can be the second block, and the third one can be your additional attributes that you're feeding, the time or like the when aspect of it, right? So we are talking about here what and where and when, and you have these 3 models and like take them into your personalization. You can apply additional parameters between 8 to 4, as I mentioned about the contractor scenario. Let them flow through. If it is anything beyond that, I want to add like additional parameters to that particular model and say any attempt that comes in within that time frame, I would like to catch it and kind of flag that. And now you can see, if I give you a spreadsheet with like 5 or 10 records, you can memorize or you can just sort them out and you can work through that. If I give you a spreadsheet with like hundreds or even thousands of records, how are you going to sort that, right? That's where our AI assistance becomes very handy, and that can scan through or process the data much faster, more efficiently, without cutting the corners, and like enhances the entire end-to-end usability and our security model. So the future of IAM, what's next? I know we have been talking about a lot of things about the AI applications and like how this is kind of going to be contributing, right? AI will be constantly evolving. We all know that, and we are seeing that in our life on a day-to-day aspect. How many of you drive autonomous cars these days, like level, whether they are like level 1, level 2, or etc., right? The aspect here is they're all trained on a daily basis. There are certain things that you can train with simulated data. For example, we all fly, and in the airlines industry, the simulation is a big thing, right? And what does it mean? All that simulation data is compiled, and then they're testing all their models based on the simulation data. Same thing when it comes to IAM, right? If you kind of collect all these additional parameters, attributes, and data set and pass through your AI data model, it tells you any abnormal behavioral attempts or like any unwanted things, it can catch much faster compared to the traditional way that we used to do. Now, a simple thing here, the biometric AI, let your identity do the talking. Now, what does it mean? So I was talking to one of the CISO at one of the large healthcare organization recently, and some of the ideas that are shared with us is mind-boggling. What they're trying to solve, how they're trying to solve. They have, a lot of organizations have this facial recognition. And his goal is to get their organization to a level where the minute a nurse or nurse practitioner or a physician walks into the patient room to see a patient, They want them to be automatically logged in. They do not want the practitioner to spend time to enter their credentials and struggle at times, like if there is a MFA, if their credential does not work, all that, they want to take it out. How is that possible? There are like multiple ways people are kind of utilizing different solutions. One simple thing can be your near field communication, like the badge. If you are wearing that and if you are close to, in the close proximity, there are like a lot of things that are being brainstormed, or like ideas are being discussed in the industry. And this is like one simple example. I would like to hear from all the audiences, like what are your practical AI applications, and how do you want to kind of enhance and make this IAM journey more meaningful, taking it to the next level where we all can get benefited. How do we prep for the future? What does it mean? The future of IAM is not just about securing access. It has to be meaningful, and it should grow in a positive way. And how do we do that? You can do it through AI readiness assessment. I'm sure, like most of you who are here doing your identity and access management work, or like you have been in this space for a long time, or you may be just getting started. So, as I explained, how I applied that mail analogy to simplify, and how we can take that into our day to day life scenario, how we apply the same concept to our identity and access management, right? Are the organizations, are these companies ready? Doing that assessment is very important. And then going and kind of reviewing, investing in the AI powered IAM conversion platforms. And the second to third, upskilling teams. Teams should understand what that means. AI people, some people are thinking, may replace workforce, right? It may not be true. One of the reasons is it may be kind of adding more jobs, and kind of, especially in our IAM space, you're taking out some of the scut work and kind of automating some of these things. What it means is getting to a safer ecosystem. As AI continues to evolve, the machine learning models, as I mentioned, in the past, we used to kind of feed our systems only who has access to what. Now your ITDR and like your SIEM systems, all the data can be collaborated, converged into the IAM system, where you're kind of adding that aspect of AI to comb through all this data and come out with a meaningful outcome. And there are some cons to this too, as we kind of prepare for this, right? There is this quantum computing that can challenge the current encryption mechanisms, right? As we do good things, they're like bad actors all the time trying to kind of see how they can control, take over, or like do some unwanted stuff. And we are confident that AI will play a key role in adapting to new cryptographic standards and enhance this in overall. And the last but not least, this is the common question that I keep getting here from a lot of security professionals. How can we trust? This is where the focus on ethical AI will drive the development of fairness, transparency, and accountability within IAM. So, the final thoughts to conclude today's webinar. The AI and data models are the future. I keep referring back to the data all the time. As you can see in this particular analysis, that data can be your user information, your account information, the permissions, your access logs. It can be anything from all your systems, right? Everything is driven in a large data set. As these technologies evolve, the IAM systems are evolving as well. It's a matter of you as an individual, how you apply your particular use case, how you leverage AI, and you kind of bring that into your IAM use case. Okay, this is where we all can change this for a better utilization of AI and build AI-driven IAM solution more secure and efficient. And I hope this presentation was useful, and we will be doing a deep dive, taking specific use cases that we heard from some of our customers, some of the challenges that we came across as part of our next deep dive webinar session. And there will be another session on the machine learning aspect, as well as the bots and the non-human identities. Perry?
Well, thank you very much, Sri. And just for those that are still here, please feel free to leave us a question in the chat. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have that are burning in your pocket around AI and IAM. Again, thank you again, Sri, for sharing your expertise. And as we said, this is sort of the high level, and then the idea is that we'll be diving deeper in some of these topics in great detail. And back to the boring stuff, right, Sri? The AI does take care of that stuff for us. I do have one question, Sri, that came ahead of time, so maybe get this ball rolling, and then we'll see if anybody else has any other questions. Is that okay with you?
Sure, Sperry.
Great. So the question came in before the talk was, how do we convert a reactive certification to proactive certifications using AI?
Great question. So as I kind of touched upon that particular topic, right? We do certifications on a quarterly, half-yearly, annual basis. Those used to be after the fact certifications, in the sense like somebody had access the minute we collect all the data. By the time somebody reviews that certification data, it's that 3 months to 6 months to 1 year. And this is where the dynamic risk profiling, risk-based certification, a dynamic way of doing certifications, point in time, right, will significantly improvise, taking the reactive-based certification approach to proactive-based certification approach by adding policies.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? If you want to turn on your microphone or send us a chat. If not, we'll let folks go. You're able to put it on the sidebar. There's a little chat box there if you'd like. Thank you, Scott, for attending. It's quite an exciting field. No longer boring, is it, Sri?
Absolutely, Sperry. We all learn, and like I always encourage my peers and colleagues, it's learning for everybody every day. So feel free to contact us and chime in and bring your problem statements or ideas, and we would be happy to work with you guys to see what is our next challenge we would like to solve. That's our goal. And I greatly appreciate taking time and joining us today.
All right. Well, thanks again. We'll stay tuned, and we'll hopefully see you next month. It's the second Thursday of every month, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Sri, for your time and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you, Sperry. Thank you, all the participants, for joining. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.